Hey everyone. Welcome to Ink Scribes, the comics podcast where we discuss the art and craft of comics. I'm Colin Singh, an aspiring artist and lifelong student of the craft, and I'm joined by my co-hosts Eric Zawadzki and Taylor Stauft. Before we get into today's episode, Eric has some plugs. So Eric, let him know.
Okay, so yeah, I'm the artist of Assorted Crisis Events. We're out monthly from Image Comics. The first issue was sold out, so there's a second print available. And yeah, it's basically Black Mirror if time and space was breaking down. Every single issue is a one and done that takes place in this world. And yeah, we've got a couple issues out already, and yeah, I'd appreciate the support picking it up. And Taylor,
I'm Taylor Stauft. I'm known for my work on From Fire and Blood, a Jason Zhang adventure, and Uncaged, available on Comixology now. But I am looking for a new comics project. So if you got anything, let me know.
All right, everybody. So today we're going to be looking at the career of Barry Windsor-Smith. This is the first episode of a multi-parter where we look at the entirety of his career and also the style and technique of his art. In this episode, we're going to be covering 4 different books and also looking at some of his covers, including Daredevil, Conan, and his personal what would you call it? Like his personal magazine,
Yeah.
monthly magazine published from Dark Horse, Storyteller.
so I've defined 4 style periods that he's gone through, and none of these are set in stone, but this is just what I gathered. There's his early Kirby-esque period. There's his gore blimey Barry Smith style, and then there's the post gore blimey Barry Windsor-Smith Marvel years, and then there's something I like to call the Barry Windsor-Smith the writer years, and I'll explain that a little later because there is an explanation for that last title. But yeah, so yeah, we're going to cover specifically today Daredevil number 52, Conan number 24, Daredevil number 236, and then Storyteller number 1. So yeah, you guys read all these comics. What do you guys think of the style spectrum that we've seen with all 4 of these comics?
They're pretty well delineated, I would say. Yeah.
If you guys watch Dragon Ball Z, audience, you guys obviously watch Dragon Ball Z. I would define this. Eric did a really good job picking these books.
Yeah.
Daredevil 52 especially, and we'll get into that in a second. But I mean, if you could just take, this the CMYK breakdown that Eric's put together here, that would be the dictionary definition of versatility. And
Yeah.
you could say that Daredevil 52 is Goku SJ1 to SJ2 to SJ3 to SJ4. Okay. And I mean, I'm really amped up for this one because I mean, I'm amped up for all of them, but this one, Eric will tell you, especially Barry Windsor Smith is my guy. Barry Windsor Smith is the one. Okay, and we'll get into that a little bit. You're going to throw up some Weapon X, right? So my first exposure to Barry Windsor Smith was Weapon X, and it came. I think I was 7 or 8 years old when I first read Weapon X in Marvel Comics Presents, and that was the first time where I don't know. It was to me at that time the perfect comic. There it is right there. And actually, yeah, I read it in trade paperback form before I read the floppies. My dad had bought the floppies, but I just never, I was never able to read them until I got the trade paperback collection. So, uh, yeah.
Conversely, I think
So I'm distracted.
my only interaction with Barry Windsor Smith's well, not only, but the majority of my interaction with Barry Windsor Smith's work is Weapon X. Like that's the only one that I've read any large amount of. Um, so it was super cool seeing like how he starts off super Kirby, and then eventually just gets to this super loose watercolor. I don't know. It's like it's like what somebody suffering roid rage in Paris would draw. You know, like it's just like it's so full of power, but also softness. I don't know. It's super
I mean,
cool.
this is we're going to look at a 60-year career in under 2 hours. I hope. So yeah, it's going to be. I mean, it is pretty crazy. But do you guys know what his very first comic was?
This appears to be
X-Men number, what was it? It was before, it was
53.
pre-94.
53.
53, yeah.
Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, so I have on Kindle. I have the X-Men Epic Collection, book 3, and so yeah, he was in issue 53.
Oh,
Yeah,
this is
he was
during
like,
the we'll do anything to keep this book going
oh
era.
yeah, it was about to get canceled, and so yeah, you can put a 19-year-old on one issue.
Yeah.
Uh, he was 19 years old, showing up in New York with his buddy. He traveled from England, and he showed up to New York with Steve Parkhouse, who's still working in comics today. Steve Parkhouse. I think he regularly does a Resident Alien comic from Dark Horse, like a new miniseries
Oh, wow.
every year or something. So Barry Windsor-Smith sent a package in, and they got mail saying, "Yeah, keep it up, good job." And they saw that as like an invite, and so they showed up and showed up at the office and got the tour. And
And this is, of course, back when you could just go into the office. Like there
yeah,
was
you can't do that now.
literally
Yeah.
nothing stopping you. If you showed up and just said, "Yeah, I'd like to talk to
Yeah.
somebody," they'd be like, I guess. There's security, there's locks on the doors, there's key cards, there's all kinds of shit in the way. But it used to just be Stan and Saul Brodsky and fabulous Flo Steinberg all crammed into an office.
Yeah, and somebody could show up and get a tour.
Yeah, just harangue
Um,
them into a job.
yeah, and I think this 19-year-old whiz kid, Barry Smith, basically said, "Yeah, I'm available for work," and uh, I think Roy Thomas basically said, like, "Oh, I mean, we're looking for an X-Men story, but we don't. I mean, we don't have a story for you to draw yet." And they left, and then Barry Smith basically walking back to the hotel came up with a story. And I think he and Steve Parkhouse discussed this, and then he drew this comic in 2 days, showed up on Monday with a comic saying, "How's this? We came up with this. You didn't have a story. We came up with one." And that's going to be a recurring theme throughout this entire thing. Barry Smith basically writes all these stories, but somebody comes in at the very end to put dialogue in, and then takes takes the paycheck and the credit as writer.
Yeah, this is during the time when that's what a writer is mostly doing.
The origin of Barry Windsor-Smith, it's Ulyssian. And like when he got to
Yeah.
New York, he was doing pages on a park bench in Central Park for Conan. Like that's one thing that's really stuck out to me. He's the same age as my oldest uncle. He's 70 fucking 5.
Well,
As of
actually,
this recording, he's
I think the
75 years
park
old.
bench story is the X-Men story. Yeah,
I thought it was
think.
Conan.
Well, no, he was more established by then, because Conan is about 3 or 4 years after this, and by then he was living in New York. Well, I mean,
Oh, okay.
he got kicked out because he
Okay.
overstayed and his visa, and then he came back, and then
Mhm.
he went back to England a couple of times, but I think most of Conan was done in New York, but then some of it was done in England. Yeah, I mean it's a whole thing. Yeah, the whole park bench story.
Whatever book is, it's true. It's still a true story, regardless of what book he
Yeah.
was working on, right? Like
So after this, he did
that's a real
Daredevil.
adventurer attitude.
It is.
Yeah, I mean he just freaking 19 years old. It's
Yeah, the
crazy.
past was no joke. Like people are expected to do a lot more back in the day.
You my uncles told me stories of when he immigrated to Canada back in
Yeah,
the 70s.
I
Like
can't
he was doing the
imagine
same
that.
shit,
Yeah.
Yeah. Because my
Okay,
uncle,
so
my family's from England too. My dad's side. So for context, but anyway,
so yeah, he drew after that X-Men story. He did like a short story that like a Western story, I think, that showed up a couple years later, and then he did 3 issues of Daredevil. Basically, Stan Lee and Gene Colan left the book, and then Roy Thomas and Barry Smith showed up for like 3 issues.
Check out
Uh,
our Gene Colan Tomb of Dracula episode for more.
yeah. So Barry Smith calls this work amateurish and klutzy, but he says Stanley felt Barry Smith had the essence of Kirby in him, and yeah, there were stories that like Stanley told him to draw like Jack Kirby, but that's not the case. He just like worshipped at the altar of Kirby, and he thought this is like the ultimate version of what a comic should look like, and so this was all of his own choice.
Well, this
Does
is
that make
Daredevil
sense?
51, though, right?
Yeah. So I'm just going to quickly go through just this one very quickly. Because yes, I want to show off some Kirby-isms that I found in this. Like you have this Kirby tech going on
Hell yeah.
here, and then yeah, also you got this like crazy robot, which has like the typical Kirby like curves going on,
Yep,
and
just circles for no reason.
yeah, and like this thing going on. So a lot of Kirby tech, but these are not Kirby layouts. So something I want to talk about is that like when we talk about style, we usually talk about how someone draws a face or a figure, but
Mhm.
and backgrounds and such. But there's also a storytelling style, and this is not Jack Kirby's storytelling style. This is closer to Jim Steranko's
I
storytelling
was
style,
gonna
which is
say, yeah.
yeah, very experimental.
Mhm.
And I wanted to show this off specifically because like this looks like something Steranko would do right here. And also like did you guys read that Steranko the Jim Steranko 3-part Captain America story?
I think I've read one of them.
So the very first page, Captain America walks past this. So yeah, right here. This is the very first page of Captain America 110. And this came out 3 months before this comic. And
Oh,
so look at this Steranko style here where we're getting a figure slowly walking towards the camera in a fixed position, and then we have this image. So Barry Smith was clearly inspired by that comic and then showed it off here. And stuff like this is very Steranko.
oh yeah.
And in fact, actually, the original art for this is on Heritage Auctions. And so I just wanted to quickly show this off.
Now, how does that work? How does that overlay work when it
Yeah, I'm
comes
not
to
sure
getting
because
color?
I thought it would be on a separate page, or
Yeah.
but maybe it was, and after it was sold, it was glued down. I love
Yeah.
the rad, and
Cause it
Saul,
is. Yeah.
colorist, speak to Saul Brodsky.
Yep.
Saul
The
Brodsky
production
was
manager.
the Marvel production manager at the time. So yeah, pretty cool to see that. And just the wild coloring and the montage of figures, it looks a lot like Steranko. And look at this. This is like like pop art psychedelia that was
Yeah.
with the. So, I mean, this page is like Daredevil's vision of stuff going on, and then this seems like something out of a Nick Fury issue.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
This
so
also
clearly not Kirby storytelling, even though it looks like Kirby figures.
Yeah. What's interesting is I feel like he actually gets closer to Kirby layouts as we go further into the future from this.
52. So what do you guys think of this comic?
This was super fun. I love the. I feel like he's actually doing acrobatics better than Kirby does. Kirby's figures are often, and this is no shade to Kirby. He's the king for a reason, and I'm not going to come at the king, but his figures are often they feel quite heavy, and they just kind of move through space like a truck being thrown. Whereas Smith's figures, it feels like they're twisting to get momentum through the air, like just this whole sequence of the Panther moving. It does feel like he's launching himself off stuff and kind of pushing as he needs to. It's very cool. It reminds me of remember in the first Spider-Man movie when you finally saw like web slinging in action, and there'd be things like, oh, I just got to keep running on the side of this building and then push off. It feels like, yeah, you're thinking about the actual movement of the human figure across rooftops.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
good call,
physics
yeah.
of it.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Daredevil 52 is a really, really, really good pick, Eric, because he must have impressed them enough to be able to take 2 full pages to show the formidability of Black Panther with him just jumping around, bouncing off buildings and stuff with no words.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I
Absolutely,
was
2
surprised by
whole
that.
pages with no words.
And
Like,
no,
this is like
no captions except
Well, I
for
mean, there's the one caption in the one we're
yeah,
here,
but
but
there's no
your
like
point is like still valid. Like it is. I was surprised by the lack of words or dialogue during this. I mean, he says he wrote this. He just made it up as he went along. He said, and then of course Roy Thomas credited himself with as a writer. So essentially, this is what Barry Smith handed in. Uh, what's surprising to me is that Roy Thomas didn't throw a bunch of dialogue
yeah,
all over this and
yeah.
ruin it basically.
There's no King of Wakanda. The Black Panther moves sleekly through the night. There's no
But that's what
like
I'm talking about. Like, they must have
Yeah.
loved it enough that they were just like, "Just
yeah.
let it breathe. Just let it breathe," right? Like, this guy knows what he's doing. Just go for the ride, you know?
And as a result, it
And
feels very modern.
yeah, especially like this. I mean, this is basically a double page spread.
Yep.
Because the two top panels are connected, but
Yeah.
back then I think it was a little more difficult to do double page spreads. Like I do remember in that Steranko Captain America, like there was a clear divide in the gutters because I think they couldn't do full bleed, but the use of these two top panels is just there to build atmosphere, and yeah, honestly it doesn't read like a Kirby comic, which is
Mm.
no shade at Kirby, but these are his Kirby years. But from a storytelling standpoint, he's not telling a story like Kirby would tell it.
Yeah.
And I love the coloring in this. And there back then I guess they didn't credit colorists, and I did a Google search, and it's either Michelle Wrightson or Johnny Craig. I'm not sure. Like I had two
Mm.
different sources gave me that.
Yeah.
Um,
I just want to draw slight attention to the treads on the Panthers' boots. Boy, that is not something you see very often. Before, I think, Hush.
oh really?
Yeah, I mean, I know. I mean, it's kind of a joke, but I know that Jim Lee has said like, I put treads on Batman's boots.
Really? I didn't
They're
know
not smooth business shoes. I put treads, and from that point, and I know I've seen other artists go, God damn it, now I got to do it too. Fuck.
that.
But here we are. Like it's it's not super detailed, but it is the sort of thing that I don't think artists back then would even really bother to think about. Like, well, what's the point? You might put a heel on it, but other than that, I don't know if you would put the texture of gripping boots.
Yeah. Did you guys know the gutter space here
It's
is
very strange.
yeah, it's part of the building, and
Yeah.
then you get the shadow. So and then he's like falling down, so you have to kind of view it from a different angle. But yeah, I mean, very interesting layouts, very experimental in this time, because I will say he's not a super experimental storyteller in the future.
Those Steranko-isms, or the Fury influence from the Fury issues, it only comes up 3 more times in this issue.
Oh, interesting.
On
Oh,
pages, well, towards the end, there's 2 on the final page, but there's also one, page number 13, I think. Yeah, there you go. So there's one
this
there at the
one,
top, on the top row.
this
Yeah,
page is amazing.
Yeah.
it's
Did
so
this page
good.
not blow
It's
your
so
mind?
good.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Just how he's not using the regular Z path that your eye is supposed to follow, and he's forcing your eye to move in very specific directions. But yeah, this is these people are moving. These characters, you can feel their movement,
Yeah.
and your eye goes this way and then down and then up. Yeah, it's just a very cool page.
Yeah, because it still makes sense to your eye to go, okay, we're going down. Okay. And then, because it still leads you back up to the top of the next page as well.
Yeah, and actually, so I wanted to comment on this tree here because I found an old quote from Comic Book Artist Magazine #2 in 1998. Barry Windsor-Smith said, "I had a fixed idea that comics were Kirby, and in drawing a comic, I drew it to the best of my young abilities as if I was Jack Kirby. However, if during that same period I chose to draw, say, a tree that I admired in some park somewhere, I would draw it in the correct and well-observed manner that my brilliant drawing instructor had taught me in art school. Real drawing was academic, but comics was Kirby."
Mm,
And so
interesting.
I just saw this tree and immediately thought about
Yeah.
that quote. But it just the idea of him. There's these ideas of him drawing on park benches, and yeah, you can kind of picture him drawing this page on a park bench and seeing a tree, and this is a page where the people are running around to the city, and so he just throws a tree in there.
Can you go back a few pages to when Foggy is talking? Yeah, this one. I want to bring special attention to the left-hand page. It's a pretty unique shot for this time. The middle right-hand panel there with
Yeah,
the low angle shot of, well, actually just that whole middle section there.
well, and his
Um,
hand is foregrounded. Yeah,
yeah, and it's like this is, you don't often see this low of a shot, because I know at the time there's How to Draw Comics the Marvel Way, and this and the varying of eye lines and stuff was one of the things that people did respond to when it came to Marvel Comics versus something like DC, which was a lot more mid shot with not a lot of angles going on. But even this for the time is like, that's wild, right? It's even more exaggerated
yeah. I mean,
and
he's doing that Kirby
really,
thing where he's pushing. He's pushing.
yeah, but he's like pushing it farther than Kirby would have,
Yeah, yeah.
which I
And
find really interesting. It just looks so cool, and it's a great way to get both those characters into the shot as well.
yeah, definitely. And I
Because
mean,
it's just,
again, these panels at the bottom, the right page, like this.
yeah, the
This is
cascading
just
downwards.
fun experimenting. This is a 19-year-old just playing and trying to bend the medium a bit in ways that he isn't as interested in later on in his career. So it's pretty
Mhm.
interesting to observe this. But and also this is like his fourth or maybe fifth comic he's ever drawn. Ah, yeah, yeah. Because I mean, clearly he's some sort of prodigy, right?
Yeah, I mean, because I want to say in England, like if you're not on a strictly academic track, if you're not like headed for university, I think they start you at things like cooking, mechanic, artist when you're like 16. They figure like, well, you're not going to Cambridge, you're not going to Oxford. Let's get you learning how to draw properly now. Now that of
Yeah.
course comes from a British sitcom I watched called The Inbetweeners, so I don't know if that's
Well, I
entirely,
mean, he
but
did. I think he said he went to 2 years of art school,
yeah.
and he was done by age 19. So,
Mhm.
so I mean, what does that tell you? I guess he was in art school at what, like 16?
Yeah, it would make sense if he was like 16 turning 17 when he starts art school.
I do want to say that like Kirby was doing a lot of these 4 panel grid pages
Yeah.
way back then. Like all his comics were in grids basically, with the occasional wide panel thrown in and the occasional big panel thrown in. But Kirby liked the grid, and so you have a little bit of Kirby storytelling here. But yeah, the figures are straight up Kirby. And here is the DeLuca effect, something we've
Mm,
talked about a lot in previous episodes. What I found interesting about this is that the DeLuca effect was coined in a 2008 essay by a comics historian called Paul Gravatt, and he was talking about a 1975 comic by Gianni DeLuca, who was an Italian cartoonist who he was adapting Hamlet, which is one of Shakespeare's longest plays, and DeLuca only had 48 pages to work with, and so he tried to come up with an innovative way to put these 30,000 words in a 48-page comic, and it was him doing essentially the DeLuca effect, which is showing multiple figures walking throughout the page within a panel. So according to that essayist, Gianni DeLuca kind of owns that effect because of that particular comic, but he didn't invent it. Like, it was showing up in comics years before then. And yeah, this is 1969, like 6 years before that particular comic. So I found that interesting.
I just did a quick search for it, and in the Gianni DeLuca Wikipedia article, it has a panel from Hamlet demonstrating it, and it's occurring to me now that I wonder if the reason DeLuca kind of owns it is because in this it's mostly action. It's describing action, but when DeLuca does it, it's just kind of it's not fist fighting action. It's more about dialogue. So there's like there's a divide or something going on there between what it's used for and who can lay claim to it.
Well, and yeah, DeLuca effect just has a nice ring to it, I guess.
Yeah, the Windsor-Smith effect doesn't really work as well.
Yeah, and to be fair, like Barry Smith probably didn't invent this.
Yeah.
I mean, it was probably it might have been invented back in the early 1900s. Not sure, but
oh yeah, because we've seen it in Little Nemo.
Have like within the same panel, you have the figure repeating itself. Because I think that's the general rule, not divided by panel gunners, basically.
No, I want to say it's like a tumbling clown or something. It might have been in like one of the.
Well, also it's probably like one large image with a smaller image falling through it, or at least being followed through it. Zigzag pattern or something like that.
Yeah, I'd have to like go back and look, but I have a distinct memory of like a tumbling clown or something in Little Nemo.
Yeah. So here is a crazy Kirby-esque splash page. So
yeah, this rocks.
So yeah, not too much to dwell on with this comic, but I just wanted to point out again, like we're harping on this a lot, but very Steranko, like this
these are the last two times you see it.
Yeah, which is reminiscent of the stuff he was doing in Captain America, for example. So I'd imagine Barry Smith was very influenced by those Nick Fury comics and those X-Men comics, and definitely those Captain America comics that came out like 3 months before this one, I think. But yeah, moving on. So that Daredevil comic was 1969, and this was about a year and a half later that he did Conan the Barbarian #1. And we're not going to look at this too much, but he's still got that Kirby influence.
He sure does. Yeah.
And actually, let me show off some of the Conan Saga magazines. These were printed in the 80s, and it was reprinting everything in black and white editions. So this art right here in the cover is from his third era, I think, but these magazines were reprinting stuff from. Now this I think is his transition period to the Gorblimey years. Now I call them the Gorblimey years because after he quit Conan, he started Gorblimey Press. That's his printing business, where he sold a whole bunch of prints and made a fair amount of money for a good 5 years before that printing business sort of like I wouldn't say collapsed, but he wasn't making as much money anymore, and that's, long story short, that's why he eventually returned to Marvel. But
this is what, in the early 70s?
So, well, the Gorblimey Press was the mid to late 70s. So this is like 70.
Yeah.
This is 71. where he's still in his Kirby years. So I don't have all the Conan sagas, but I only have like 1 to 4 and then issue 9. But
Oh,
you can
the
see,
elephant one fucking rocks.
yeah. Have you guys read this entire run?
I have read just the Tower of the Elephant one myself.
Yeah, I read Tower
I
of the
have.
Elephant. I've read 1 to 17, I think, was the first. I think that's the first chunk Conan the Barbarians in the phone books. Remember those?
Do you have it on hand, Colin? The thingamajig?
It's in the it's in
Yeah.
the boxes, man.
Because Colin was gracious enough to sell me this.
Oh, that.
Beast.
Yeah, I got
Oh,
that
yeah.
right over there, man.
Yeah.
Yeah, we need to show that off on this show one day. So does that have a lot of Barry Smith art?
It has, I believe it has some. Let's. Yes, it do.
Yeah, boy. Actually, let's take a look here.
Yeah, Barry Windsor-Smith starts at page 104.
Yeah,
Okay.
so this one I'm looking at right here reprints. This is issue 4, so yeah, this is reprinting like 10, 11, and 12, I believe, and you can see he's losing the Kirby influence. I mean, this doesn't look like Kirby art at all. This is his transition into his final phase in the gore blimey style phase, that as I've defined it, as he's transitioning to Conan number 24.
Yeah, this is for any Conan fans or Barry Windsor-Smith fans.
Yeah, I mean, but it's not available for sale anymore. So yeah,
Aw,
I mean,
man.
probably pricey on eBay.
Yeah.
So Conan number 24, I think his entire Conan run was leading up to this particular issue. I think many consider this one of the greatest comic art achievements of the 1970s. And yeah, what did you guys think of this comic, especially compared to that Daredevil issue?
It does feel like he's coming into his own.
Yeah, I mean, this is like his very own style. It is. I mean, you don't see any Kirby in this, do you?
No. Yeah, he's working with light differently is the thing that stands out to me the most. The Kirby version is still very quite chunky in its blacks, the spot blacks. But when it comes to 24, it becomes a lot more about feathering and showing how light reflects off stuff. Like I love that he's not mailing up. He's not putting the mail detail in every piece of armor. Like it's metal, it shines, it reflects stuff. There's not a whole lot of big chunky blacks. There's just, especially on foreground figures, he's just like indicating.
Well, it's also he's composing the entire shot, so he's giving
Yeah.
TLC the regulated amounts of TLC to like every texture and every figure, every prop, every all the backgrounds, everything.
So he says that for backgrounds, he was trying to channel. Well, he was trying to channel Art Nouveau for the page layout and panel design.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you have a lot to say generally about Art Nouveau. Taylor? What do you think of that statement of his?
Knowing that now, that makes a lot more sense. As we'll recall from the J.H. Williams III episode, Art Nouveau looks like it's made by elves, and Art Deco looks like it's made by dwarves. So Art Nouveau is a lot more. It's about like height and decoration and spindliness.
Yeah, and his stuff is very decorative here, right?
Yeah, especially as he's receding back. Yeah, like these palaces and towers and stuff, they do feel more like that. It's not it's not immediately apparent, but now that you've brought it up, I'm like, oh, okay, I see what you mean. Yeah.
So I have a couple quotes here that I want to say from Barry Smith himself. He said, "In the 60s, I had not made the connection that to create comics didn't wholly mean to create Kirby. It is not as if my love for Kirby waned at all. Rather, I allowed my other influences to come to the fore. And that brought about the many turning points in my work that seem so evident today."
Yeah.
Yeah, he also says, "The backgrounds were mostly Art Nouveau. Later on in Conan, most of the influence came from the pre-Raphaelites, English painters. Again, it is not obvious. You'd have to look very closely at the pre-Raphaelites to find any comparison, but I did apply a lot of pre-Raphaelite technique to comic books. At least I tried to." So do you guys know anything about the pre-Raphaelite English painters?
Not much.
Yeah, the a little bit. I wanted to show you guys like some pre-Raphaelite artists, and they're just amazing artwork. But
What are we
whatever.
talking? Like who are we talking about?
Well, actually, he was influenced by, specifically, he cites John Everett Millais and Dante Gabriel Rossetti.
And not Waterhouse?
I mean, that probably was
John
there.
William
Just like,
Waterhouse?
no, he probably was, but those are just the ones he mentioned.
So John William Waterhouse did a painting called "The Lady of Shalott," which was Shalott, which is probably one of my most famous or favorite paintings of all time.
Oh, okay.
What would you say? They're very detail oriented. I think a lot of it was like capturing reality instead of
Very detail oriented, very emotional. The story, like every painting's a story. You know, it's
Yeah.
everything is like well set. Everything has a purpose, essentially.
So I look at these pages and I think every one of these panels on this particular page looks like a pre-Raphaelite painting. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, because
100%.
They seem
100%. Yes.
They seem to really value the romantic notion of their subject. I guess I don't like they've romanticized the idea of like pastoral life or whatever.
Well, and they say that Barry Windsor-Smith brought the romanticism into comics.
Okay.
So it's interesting you say that.
Yeah, just because it's like, well, like I'm looking at this Lady of Shalott picture, and it's, yeah, I don't know. It does feel very like, how cool would it be if you just came across this woman who floated out of the mists of Avalon, you know?
Yeah, and yeah, I suppose he was trying to evoke a lot of that stuff, and I mean, you can see it actually in his art book, which
Because I know some about Raphael himself, which is like he's actually one of my he's my favorite of the Ninja Turtles, both
Yeah.
artists and turtles. But Raphael was very like, he does his best known thing is probably the papal apartment frescoes, and they are super down to the like micron when it comes to perspective and angles and shit. Like
I think School of Athens
School of
is
Athens.
his most famous painting, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like that. Was it School of Athens or?
I believe it is, yeah. That he actually weirdly ruins the symmetry of by putting himself in.
Oh, really?
Yeah, you can see him like
He pulled a Shyamalan. He pulled a Shyamalan. Eric.
Yeah, just like slumped in the middle, kind of hanging out with all these guys.
Okay, so back to the comic. A little bit of a history lesson here. So there is, I think, the first issue script that Roy Thomas is out there. You can find on the internet, and it's very bare bones. And if you compare it to the actual Conan #1, you can see that yeah, Barry Smith just fleshed it out into a full story, added twists and turns, and developed characters more, and even dialogue. He would put dialogue on the edge of the original art to tell the writer what the story is.
Like
And
Ditko of old.
yeah, and there is some evidence that Barry Windsor-Smith, although you can see he is not credited as the writer, there is some evidence that he had a bigger hand in it than most people think. There was an incident here where where is this? I'm Brythonian, you worthless wank. Now, before it went to print, they caught that and changed it. They changed it to wonk at the last minute, and Roy Thomas got in trouble. And basically, the behind the scenes is that, like, I guess that was dialogue that Barry Smith came up with, and Roy Thomas checked with him and said, "What is this? Is this is that a sexualized term? Like, well, what's the deal there?" And Barry Smith basically slyly said, "No, it's fine, it's fine." And then somebody caught it before it went to print, because that is, like, English slang probably wasn't as well known back then, but it's become tame enough that they did reprint it in its original form. But that is evidence that Barry Smith's dialogue was in the comic. And
good point.
so people have used that to criticize the Marvel method.
Well,
in all these stories, Barry Smith deserves a writer's credit, but it took him years to even get any of that.
What he deserves is a writer's check as well.
Yes, 100%. And that's part of why this was his last issue on the regular Conan run, because he wasn't getting his original art back. He was slaving over these pages. He wasn't getting a writer's credit. He wasn't getting the pay for writing it. And yeah, he was just sick of being screwed over, so he was done.
That brings up a question about the characterization of Red Sonja, actually, because one of the things I really appreciate about this issue is women have historically been portrayed as pretty non-sexualized in a lot of media, especially Code era comics. And in this, you see, like, no, she's down to clown, just not right now. Like, we have shit to do now. And I'm wondering now, is that Barry Smith? Is that Howard, the original writer of Conan? Is that Roy Thomas, who's, cool with, like, these two are going to hook up, just not now. They got stuff to steal or guys to kill.
And it's in the midst of, like, the feminist movement of the late 60s and the 70s, right?
Which, like, received, like, there's a lot of pushback in some media because of that as well, right? Like, some media outlets going like, oh no, then we're going to cut the sexuality even more. Just get rid of it.
Yeah, there was quite the push and pull fight during that time.
Yeah, so it would be interesting to know who characterized her that way.
So I just want to speak on the inking. So there's two different stories out there about the inking of this comic. Barry Smith worked with so many inkers during his run that he felt a lot of them were hit and miss. And he knew this was going to be his last issue, so he didn't want to risk somebody messing it up. That's his story. However, Mike Royer, who hadn't inked any previous Conan issues, has publicly said that he was assigned the job to ink this issue while he was waiting for Jack Kirby to finish up pages, because he was under the employ of Jack Kirby, I believe. But Kirby finished faster than expected. So after inking one page of Conan number 24, he had to send it right back. And Royer claims that Barry Smith was pissed because if he knew he was going to ink it, he wouldn't have had such tight pencils. So, I don't know. Two different stories. Now, interestingly enough, Barry Smith has... Oh, that's a good question. Mike Royer has basically put it out there for people to guess, and he has not confirmed.
Bastard.
So I've seen speculation online, but I mean, I've seen people say it has to be this page because of such and such. I didn't study it too closely to try and guess, but I do want to say that this issue was inked entirely with a Mont Blanc fountain pen, and Barry Smith says he wrecked the pen in the process. Do you guys know anything about these pens?
I know they're super expensive.
Yeah.
I did a cursory look on it and found on a fountain pen pervert forum that nobody recommends it. Like there are posts asking, "Hey, what's a good MB pen for drawing?" And they're like, "None. Don't do that. Don't ever do that. It's too nice." Which I have to assume has something to do with the softness of the metal of the nib, because nibs flex, and I have to think if you're trying to get a lot of line weight variation, you're eventually going to warp or snap that nib.
Oh, and he put that pen through the paces. If you look at this ink,
Yeah.
like there is a lot of detail on that page, on all
The
these
last
pages.
panel on the second page there of Conan's face,
Yeah.
like that page itself, that's a beautiful definition shot of Conan's head.
So that brings up an interesting thing. We've said that there's no Jack Kirby-isms here at all. There is a clear Barry Smith face, and a lot of them are the eyes being too close together. And I think that just became a well-known part of his style around this time,
Oh, okay.
which is less pronounced in this issue and more in the earlier Conan issues. This page was actually censored. Yeah, his hands were underwater,
Hell yeah.
and
Barbarian indeed.
yeah, so yeah, they censored it. Interestingly, it was reprinted a couple of years later in magazine format, and they had the uncensored version.
Huh.
Also, I should say, this is colored by Barry Smith, and in that magazine version, Glynis Wynn colored that version. So for some reason, they had a different coloring. But about the coloring, Barry Smith colored the first 8 issues of Conan, and then I guess he didn't do the rest up until issue 24, this issue.
What a time suck on a monthly schedule.
Yeah,
God.
especially with how detailed this was. And also he didn't do every issue from 1 to 24, but in the midst of all that, he did like a Khazar story, and he did a 3-issue Avengers story, 98, 99, and 100. And in 100, he said that issue was a nightmare because he had to draw every single Avenger, and he didn't care about those characters at all.
The swordsman? Who gives a shit?
But he said that that he had a bit of a trademark with his coloring, which is this like multi-tone flesh passages that he would add. Which, if we go back to Conan #1, if I were to guess, I think every other colorist just had a straight flat color, but he would put in the extra work to add.
Oh yeah.
To add extra color tones, and this is from Conan 1. But it was just a lot more work for the color separators. Yeah, like you get interesting effects like that here from his first Conan. And apparently so we see a lot of like white highlights here, and apparently there was supposed to be a lot more throughout this comic, but I think he gave the color separators a color guide that was slightly smaller than they were used to, and so they couldn't read all the complexity, and so they just didn't bother with a lot of the extra complexity on the skin, which is unfortunate. Maybe I should show off like so this is the Barry Smith version, and this is the Glynis Wynn version, so you can see there isn't the highlights on the chest.
You know, weirdly, I think I like the Glynis Wynn version better.
Oh yeah,
I think so.
Yeah,
Well,
and it
if you
also
flip back, I think if he printed that on the same paper stock, it would have popped better.
Yeah, because this is a little too bright. Yeah, just to be fair, but this has so much more complexity compared to the Glynis Wynn version. There's a lot less detailing going on here, and I don't know why it was recolored, but yeah, it's interesting.
It's got to be. It must be a printing technology thing, right?
To do with like printing in a magazine? Yeah, I'm not sure.
Well, or like printing on the newsprint, maybe, because different papers hold ink differently. Is the only thing I can think of.
Yeah, I mean, who knows? But yeah, I mean, look at how intricate. Look at how intricate this work is. Like he worked his ass off here, and like trademark Barry Windsor-Smith face, or Barry Smith face from this era. Like he had a very unique look, which is only from this Gore-Blimey era.
Gore blimey.
And people really responded to the detail in this comic to the point where it's like it's seen as one of the high watermarks of the entire of the 70s when it comes to comics.
Was there like letters being written in about like where'd Barry Smith go? Bring him back.
Yeah, I'm not sure. You'd imagine so.
Yeah,
But,
because
I mean,
Marvel letter
he-
pages did not hold back.
now who do you guys associate with Conan the most as an artist? Like, what artist do you
Buscema.
associate?
Yeah, John
Yeah.
Buscema. Yeah.
So the foundation was laid by Barry Smith, but yeah, John Buscema was just on for what 100 plus issues.
Well, and I know he really liked drawing it as well. He wasn't that into superheroes, and
I've heard mixed stories about that though. Apparently, he was just unhappy with whatever he was on.
oh,
The grass was always greener, I think.
I think a big part of it was that it was Marvel publishing a Conan comic, so they kind of had to have that Marvel staple or house design, and which had to do with Kirby. So, Barry Smith could channel Kirby very well, and they were like, okay, well, let's package it as that, but that wasn't obviously Smith in his true form.
Yeah.
But definitely so I don't identify Conan very much with his style, not because of that, but because also John Buscema has done more issues of Conan, I think, than any artist till this day.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of like my house. It's like Batman's voice. Kevin Conroy is Batman's voice in your head. Whenever you're reading a Batman comic, it's Kevin Conroy. Whenever I see Conan in my head, it's John Buscema. So
now I have heard I heard someone once say that Barry Smith got the setting correct, and John Buscema got Conan, the character, correct. And a lot of that comes from just like how he does these background designs here, and just the sets that he would make.
Yeah, I get that. Buscema's Conan is a lot more brutish, I guess. And like he's got like a heavier brow. He's got kind of more of a stooped posture.
Would you say that like Barry Smith's Conan is a little, I don't know, not lankier, but not as bulky maybe as Buscema's?
Definitely the stuff from the beginning.
Well, I would say because Conan #1, he's 17 years old. Conan is 17 years old.
Oh, shit, is he? Oh, okay.
So the first 17 issues or so, Conan is a teenager. So I would say that John Buscema draws him in his adult form. So that's why it's most recognizable and identifiable to me. So
yeah, Buscema's version has like that old man weight, like the density that comes with age. Like you're not going to move him, but even issue 24, Barry Windsor-Smith, he's still quite sculpted rather than like, I don't know, the guys that win like strongman competitions and stuff.
yeah,
You know, that's what I think of when I think of Buscema's Conan.
So this is still in that era. After Conan 24, he did Red Nails.
So is this like a separate series that came out?
It was in, it was, oh geez, what was it in? Colin, do you know? It was in some sort of special like side magazine.
I remember. Here's the thing. I first picked this up. My dad picked this up as a floppy. They collected it into a floppy. And it was Conan Red Nails. So I only knew it as Conan Red Nails. So I don't know.
Okay, it was originally presented in Savage Tales #2 and 3 from 73 and 74.
Oh, Savage Tales. Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
What's that?
That's
the black and white
Savage Sword
magazine?
Pre-Savage Sword.
No, it was
the black and white magazine. Yeah.
Oh, was it? I thought it was in color, but yeah, I'm not sure. But yeah, as you can see, this is like the biggest book I own, and it doesn't fit on this mug. But like, yeah, this thing is giant. But
Size of your torso.
yeah, you can see just how detailed this stuff was, and like, yeah, Red Nails just blew everybody's minds at the time. It's still seen as just like, yeah, this legendary comic, which, like Colin, you were saying earlier, right?
That was my first exposure to Conan before 24th. So that's why I identified Conan's the look of Barry Windsor-Smith's Conan. But this Conan saga covers are actually like his full expression of Conan, I
Yeah, so
think.
that's
Yeah.
what I should say is that these covers are in the next period as I've defined them. This is in the so after Red Nails and after Conan 24 and Red Nails, he quits and then goes and starts his own like print house, which is Gorblimey Press, and then he slowly works his way back to Marvel because he's a storyteller and he really wanted to tell stories again. And so these were printed in the 80s, and this style is his 80s post Gorblimey style, which like yeah, these covers are gorgeous, eh? I should say that
This is Conan SSJ3.
What does SSJ mean? I've never seen
Super
Dragon Ball.
Saiyan 3, level 3.
Oh,
yeah.
okay.
Dude, the audience is screaming at their screens right
Yeah.
now.
Okay, so in these four different styles, to some extent, it might be a little reductive to how I have pushed it down because, like, there is an in between stage where he was doing painted comics, which I just want to briefly show off. Like, before he returned to the Marvel Comics characters, he did a bunch of painted comics, and here we go. So I just wanted to
He
quickly.
must have to work enormous. Like how big would he have to work for on a painted comic?
Yeah, I don't know, but the reason that it's in this Epic magazine is because he owns it. He wasn't willing to give the copyright up, and Epic magazine let you keep the copyright, so that's why
They
we
sure
get
did.
this here.
Yeah.
Like for instance, they were going to use this as a cover for the Red Nails magazine, but he wasn't willing to give the copyright up, so it's just called The Horde, and it's owned by Barry Windsor-Smith. The only way Marvel got it in print was if it was in Epic magazine.
Ugh, and they wouldn't pay like a licensing fee? Those cheap bastards.
Yeah, that's what Barry Windsor-Smith says. Okay, so what is the next comic we have? Okay, so in this third period, he came back to Marvel and did a whole bunch of Marvel comics. I should say that like yeah, the Machine Man series is the one he started out with, and then yeah, he did this really fun Marvel fanfare issue, and this one's like highly regarded. And yeah, he did like one X-Men comic a year for like 4 years. These were great. And then, of course, everybody knows Weapon X.
Classic.
Yeah, I mean this cover is great, but I specifically chose one particular comic, and I kind of agonized over which one to do. But there is a reason why I settled on Daredevil number 236. I mean, I did initially think of doing Life, Death, 1, Uncanny X-Men 186, but it's inked by Terry Austin, and I think the Austin's line work is pretty distinctive and very much unlike a lot of Barry Windsor-Smith's 80s work. So it was unlike all the other stuff, so not a good representation of the whole. And I thought maybe the Marvel fanfare Thing story, but there wasn't a lot of figures in that. It was primarily the Thing as the protagonist, and that's a very Kirby thing. And I thought of doing the Iron Man story, but it all takes place in sort of this ethereal, dreamlike place, so you don't get a full sense of how he draws like settings and like other kind of characters. I settled on this one because it has a variety of these elements that I'm looking for, and it's both inked by him and someone else, which is much like all the 80s stuff. You throughout all that 80s stuff, you get sometimes it's purely inked by him, sometimes by other people. So I think this was the best. This issue was the best representation, and we've already talked about this issue on a previous episode from like a month ago. The one where we were trying to guess who inked what. So in a way, we've done some prep on this in that regard. But we're specifically here to talk about his style, Barry Windsor-Smith's style when it comes to this comic. So considering phase 1 and phase 2, we're in phase 3 now. What did you guys think about the leap from the last phase to this one?
Well, I identify this style mostly with what he did on Weapon X, and Weapon X was my first introduction to Barry Windsor-Smith. And I mean, I had something to say before when we were going to talk about pre-Raphael artists, how they're more like emotion based and more into storytelling. Their compositions are more to tell a story. Weapon X. Before we get into this, Weapon X was the one story where, as a kid reading it, like you're not exposed to certain things like resilience and stuff. So when Wolverine breaks out of the lab and he's off in the forest on his own, like there was a mindset of like, oh, like loneliness and like, what's he gonna do? You actually feeling bad for a character, like worrying about a character that I'd never been through those emotions before. As a kid, I thought it was the end of the world, even though he goes on to become Wolverine.
Yeah, you already know how it's
so
gonna
obviously
go.
he had resilience. You already know how it's going to go, but like I actually felt loneliness within myself. I'm like, what would I do if I was in that situation? I had no money, I had no resources, except, and he's illustrated as a force of nature within nature. Like there's a lot of scenes with the wolves and stuff in the forest, and he really like exposed me to this way of thinking and this way of like just this emotional storytelling that I'd never read before, and I never felt this way before. Like this book stayed with me for days afterwards. Like I just thought about it and thought about like, what would he do? Like, what's he gonna do? Like, every issue, I was just, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know nearly as much about Barry Windsor-Smith, but this is the era that I really associated with him with. It really looks like he's learned what he can strip away and what needs to be there. Like he's lost a lot of the, in comparison to say Conan, he's lost a lot of the line-based shading. He's lost a lot of the form definition, and he's more efficient at it, I guess, would be.
Also just his mass and his spacing in time and space,
Yeah.
like his compositions of his shots, like the size relationships between two characters spaced out, even in crowd shots, are just it's just amazing.
Yeah, it's a lot more balanced. It makes a lot more sense. It's more clear. He's really firing on all cylinders in this era, because there's no longer, as much as I like the Conan stuff, there are times where you think, oh, I would think that modern or just a few years later, Barry Smith would have like extended a punch farther and extended the impact greater. But that now it does seem like he's got movement. Like, yeah, like actually look at that bottom panel on the left hand page. That's great. Not just Daredevil, but I really like the Widow's like vaulting over that.
Yeah.
And he's
Goes
learned
back to what you mentioned about Black Panther in that first Daredevil comic, right? The athleticism.
Yeah, and it seems like I guess he's really like he's starting to really incorporate everything together, like the dynamism of Kirby and the figures of pre-Raphael brotherhood and their emotional storytelling. Because you're right, Colin, this is like he's really putting the emotion into Weapon X and this and the X-Men stories that he's doing. And I agree, it's the way he does it is it can be overwhelming when you first read it. Just like, oh my god, I feel so bad for, like, is this Nuke? I want to say it's Nuke.
Oh no, I think this is a brand new character who's
It's not
commenting
Nuke.
on this guy.
Okay.
He's reading about Nuke
Yeah.
in the paper.
But he's like, he's falling apart, and you feel like he's the villain, but also, man, I feel bad for this guy.
I should say that Barry Windsor-Smith at this point is still not writing his own stuff, although you could argue he was like co-writing a lot of this stuff, and he would, as I said earlier, he would write dialogue notes in the margins, and he would get frustrated that he would have subtle emotions on the page, and he would write dialogue that conveyed a lot of that subtlety, and then he'd read the finished comic, and it would be, no subtlety about it. Like the characters shouting and screaming, and he'd just be so frustrated.
You can't have characters just say how they feel. That makes me feel angry.
Well, more like he had a more mature outlook on a lot of these emotions, and he wanted to convey subtlety, but he was frustrated that a lot of the writers he worked with, and I should say he never said any of this about Ann Nocenti, but overall, like a lot of the writers he worked with, he was frustrated that they weren't subtle in the slightest.
This is the Jim Shooter era too?
Yes, this is.
Yeah, Jim Shooter's main goal as EIC was, you, like, if this is your first issue, you better understand everything that's going on. So he did contribute to, because I feel like the 70s were a point, especially for Marvel, where they were experimenting with getting more subtle, more experimental, and trying to grow beyond what had been in the 60s. And it feels like they didn't really get as far as they could have, because Shooter takes over and lays down a lot of editorial edicts of, you got to have people say how they feel. You got to have people observe what their powers are. You have to have them observe what they're doing. You have to
Everybody has to say their name early on.
What their origin is. Yeah, like Storm better mention that she was a queen at some point and worshipped as a goddess each issue. Otherwise, how would you know?
Yeah, so going back to what you said earlier, I think about his detailing here, I do think this is a more mature version of his detailing, and there's a lot more restraint. Like, there's a lot more attention towards negative space, where it feels like he was just putting everything on the page back then.
You know what comes to me every time I flip through this one? I flip through this one a lot. You could put this one on the stands today. People would pick it up and people would love it, and it would be critically reviewed very well. It would still hold up.
Yeah, it's quite modern in its pacing and just in spite of the editorial edicts, I think.
Yeah, so you could say that he has very distinct faces now, faces that look nothing like that previous period. You could say that about all his work right now, right? And I made a comment about his eyes, how like Conan's eyes were a little too close together around that time, but I think he has a very interesting stylistic quirk here, where he likes to draw really small eyes.
It does feel like somebody, it feels like somebody observed, why does Conan have such large, luscious eyes?
And that this was a answer to that?
Yeah, he doesn't. No, everybody's got small eyes. It's the small eyes of a human.
It is interesting that each era is kind of defined by specific eyes, but maybe not. Maybe because there's a blend between this and the last era as well. I think he's firmly found his style at this point.
You know, the thing is, I remember when I worked at an art supply store, I remember we would get art teachers coming in for supplies, and one of them observed just how much her students loved drawing eyes. Like they were obsessed with them. And it struck me then that, like, yeah, that makes sense, right? Like our eyes are, the human eye is a very distinct thing. And getting it right is really important. So I could see him really working to, if not get them like technically correct, then at least getting them emotionally correct or distinct something, like you're always in flux, always wanting to get those eyes right.
Yeah, and more importantly, it's uniquely him, and I mean, it feels like nobody else draws eyes like Barry Windsor-Smith. Actually, I saw a photo the other day of I was watching White Lotus, and there was a Vanity Fair photo shoot of all the actors, and there's one actress that I was shocked. This one actress looked like a Barry Windsor-Smith, like a character brought to life, which I should put on the screen here. But yeah, looked kind of like this with the big eyelids and the very distinctive cheekbones and face.
Is it Carrie Coon?
No, it was the French lady, the woman from Quebec. There we go. This one. Okay, right here. Does this not look like a Barry Windsor-Smith woman?
Holy 100%.
Shit! Yep, I see it.
I thought it was going to be like, oh yeah, I could see it, but no. Now that I'm looking at it,
oh, that's crazy, eh?
Huh. Well, there you go.
Close a bunch of stuff here. Yeah,
he's drawn from real life.
Well, I mean, she was probably born like after this comic came out.
She was created in a lab in France.
No, she's born after Witchblade #1.
Yeah. Okay, so I should say that like he was only on a handful of comics throughout the 80s, and sales went up whenever he was on one of these comics. People just really responded to his detailed art.
Could he just not handle the schedule anymore, or was he in a position now where he just didn't have to?
That's a good question. I think he was just enjoying himself, taking his time, but he says that he was pretty poor working throughout the 80s. And that is one of the reasons why he made a lot of his decisions in the 90s. Let's look at a bunch of his covers from that era. So yeah, around that time, he actually look at this Machine Man cover where Machine Man is slowly building himself over time. Just crazy.
Man, I
gotta say,
yeah,
it's hard for me because I'm like a televangelist when it comes to Barry Windsor-Smith. I think Barry Windsor-Smith is just the answer to like any comic. So
your
these
favorite
covers, we're gonna go through them. He's my absolute favorite. I have favorites, but if there's a Mount Rushmore, even if there's just one head on Mount Rushmore, it would be him.
Okay.
Nice. What do you mean though, in terms of like when you go through these covers, are you just like, but what's he doing on Machine Man?
It's more of I don't know if it's like an emotional attachment to the style in terms of my own upbringing and the comics that I was reading growing up and when I was exposed to him, and then, going back and reading his older stuff and just seeing his style, the way especially this cover to Daredevil 217, like I would,
yeah, that shit rocks.
Agonize. I would agonize over this cover. I'm like, how did this is the way comics should be. Like, you know what I mean? It's just, I don't know. I've always just in my mind started to rewire itself to see the world the way Barry Windsor-Smith can see the world. And I'm still trying to figure it out. Like Life Death, the cover to 198. Again, same thing. Like even both of the comics, like the Life Death story, there's so many beautifully realized, it's a beautifully realized world in this story. Like everything is fully realized. The backgrounds, the props, everything is just, even the way the characters dress, everything is just like, it's perfect. It's perfect. You don't need anything else. You know, whether you saw it in color or you saw it in black and white, it still stands up. So
It is a very
it's extremely hard to do comics like that.
it's a very European feel to me, but like European filtered through American comics, I guess. I don't know. I don't know how to
Oh yeah,
describe
you
it.
think so?
Hmm?
Yeah, you think so? That's interesting.
There's just something about the delicate use of line or I don't know, matter of factness of the human form or something that like it reminds me of a lot of like Sergio Bonelli Italian comics like Nathan Never, stuff like that, where it's just regular people. Like he's great at doing regular people in
You
fantastical
know,
situations.
it's so freaking crazy. You bring up Nathan Never. I was just looking at his stuff like for that book yesterday.
Yeah.
I was looking up drawings for Nathan Never yesterday, and you're right. The depictions, applying it to Barry Windsor-Smith, they're honest. Like the way Barry Windsor-Smith draws, it's honest. Like
Yeah.
every detail he's trying to define, it's the way it should look. I don't know. I don't know how else to verbalize it, but yeah,
It's not
he's
exaggerated, you know. It's not like he's getting
yeah.
into a highly representational
Mm.
form here, I guess. I don't know. These are there's a lot of
This
terms that describe that sort of thing, but I don't know.
this is interesting because this is Arthur Adams inked by Barry Windsor-Smith,
Mhm.
and they work so well together. Weirdly
Yeah,
enough,
they
you wouldn't
do.
think so.
Yeah, I mean, I guess Smith
Well, it's
would.
you could say it's one amoeba enveloping another in that case.
Well, it's interesting because there was an Excalibur issue that Barry Windsor-Smith drew, and it was inked by Bill Sienkiewicz, and that is not a good fit in my opinion. It just those are two great tastes that don't necessarily taste great together.
Sorry, what was this called? What was it?
There's an Excalibur issue with drawn by Barry Windsor-Smith. I think it's like Excalibur number 27. Yeah, inked by Sienkiewicz. Look at these call covers.
Hell yeah.
Oh, these call covers. The yeah, these see I should have I didn't know we were going to go through all of these.
Yeah, it's just a fun little look at and well, this cover.
Man, I love the way that he draws. Like, if Wolverine's hand isn't in the right position, those claws start like pushing out through at the wrong points.
Yes. Yes, and that's when I actually started to think of things that way too.
Yeah.
Like because I always you either had those little silver caps on them
Hmm.
or they just came out of his knuckles. And this was around the Jim Lee era too, when I seriously got into comics. So like obviously they were just these giant rectangular blades coming out of between his knuckles.
Yeah.
And I didn't know that if you moved your hand a certain way, like they would kind of come out, they would jut out in different positions. So yeah,
Yeah.
it really changed the wiring in my brain.
And because it kind of it predates. I remember the X-Men movie really making the claws make sense to me. Like, oh, they come out from between the knuckles. I get it now. They're housed here and they come out. But it's like he's presaging that view of it by just having like he's activated the claws, but his hands aren't quite in the right position, and they're just kind of tearing them or slicing their way out the wrong angle.
Okay, so in his final period, the way I see it is I think he was tired of being poor, and this is just me coming to conclusions because throughout the 80s he said that he did like one X-Men comic a year, and the royalties were pretty good. He had a run of New Mutants covers, but he was not making a lot of money, and so he basically got hired for a very lucrative position at Valiant, and he pared back things a bit just to focus more on story. more as a storyteller. So I've got a quote here from him. He says, "The balance I've always dreamed of having is where you can make it flow so easily. And this really, to me, is the grail for me, where I can make my reader forget they're reading a comic book. That's what I aim for all the time, you know, like in the movies. If you notice the architecture of the theater during the film, then the story didn't take you away. If I do something too flash with my visuals, I will check it out and do something less flash, because I don't want anybody to say, wow, that is a cool drawing, man. I want it all to balance." So he's more in storyteller mode. He basically here's another quote. "I learned, for instance, a very simple process that works perfectly for me, which is don't draw, write only. It is the words that are important, and it is, frankly, in Storyteller, to be perfectly honest with you, the quality of my drawing has gone down a bit from the immaculately inked works from the 80s because I am turning out 32 pages a month here. Along with running a studio, I am drawing, inking, writing, coloring, and making all the business decisions that I can, etc., etc. All in 30 days. I mean, where the fuck do I get the energy, for God's sake? Thank God someone invented coffee." Yeah, that's jumping ahead a bit. So he worked for Valiant a bit, and then he did he did something for Malibu, Rune, and
Nice.
and then he did his Storyteller book. There's one more quote I want to find, which is right here, I believe. So this is from the collected editions of the Young Gods story. He says, "At the time, a friend commented to another friend, 'Barry has given up drawing to become a writer.' This was meant as a criticism and was spoken far from my earshot. But the fact of the matter was that it was quite true." Um, Yeah, so almost at any rate in my overview for Storyteller, the drawings, the inking, the color were subordinate to the stories and the character. And so that's why I've dubbed this phase the Barry Windsor-Smith, the writer phase, because he's very concerned with the flow of the story more. He doesn't want the visuals to be like shouting out at you. He wants you to get lost in the story, and story is king, character is king. Big flashy type art, that is secondary.
That's interesting. I think I like the storyteller stuff the best.
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, so that's your favorite era, you think?
I
Which we're
think
gonna look
so.
at that
I
now.
think so. Like I should read more of it, but I don't know. I think the style appeals to me more. I think he's got this kind of yeah. He's kind of loosened up to from the post gore blimey time, and I think you get like it feels like it's more fun. I get what he's saying about the flow. The layouts are a little stiff, but I don't know. In terms of figure work, it's like, oh, this feels a lot more fun.
The layouts are very Kirby. It's weird how he like came full circle
Yeah.
because and a lot of that was, he was producing 32 pages a month, but this is very Kirby, these 4 panels a page.
Well, Kirby was producing 8 panels a day or 8 pages a day, so you gotta cut story or corners somewhere. And I think he's right when he says, if you notice the architecture of the theater, something's going on. So there is something to the idea that if you simplify the layout structure enough, it does move out of your way, and the reader can just focus on what's happening in the panels rather than what the panels are doing and what the page is doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because in that early career, we commented that he was very experimental, and sometimes when you're experimental, you're seeing the page and you're seeing just how different it is and how it is very loud and flashy. There's nothing flashy about this at all. And actually, we should comment like even in the second and third phase, it wasn't that experimental. It was just panels on a page telling a story.
Mm.
And that's his philosophy around this time is he doesn't want you to see the page. He wants you to get lost in the story. And from Weapon X on, he he was a credited writer.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, like, what do you guys think of? So I should say, like, Storyteller is 3 different stories published. So there's the Freebooters story. Then there's the Paradox Man, and then there's Young Gods.
I think
And
we're all split along those stories, right?
yeah. So what's everybody's favorite of the 3?
Well, to give context, just to explain about Storyteller itself. So there were 3 stories running through this magazine, but every story got the meat of the issue. So one story would be about 24, 25 pages, and then the second would be 10 pages, and the third, and they would just rotate. So in issue 1, Freebooters gets the 25 pages, and then Paradox Man gets 10, and I think Young Gods gets 8. So we're just going to look through the first one and this one, but like they always rotate. So every issue, one story gets most of the page count.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, which was everybody's favorite?
Freebooters for me, especially for number 1. Freebooters.
Yeah.
I'm gonna I'll say it off the
Well, it
off
was
the
the
top,
main.
and then you guys can
It was
speculate.
the main story in number
It was
1.
the main story, but it's also the most fully realized story, like in terms of composition of every panel, the world itself, the backgrounds, the props, the figure placement, everything. Like the Paradox Man, like the first half of it is all splash pages, and I love Paradox Man, just like especially chapter 1 just for that. But I think in the long run, Freebooters was probably my favorite over the 9 issues.
Taylor, what about you?
For me, it's the
That's
young.
probably one of the greatest double splash pages of all time, right there.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, that's rad.
Yeah.
For me, it's Young Gods all the way. I love the concept of the New Gods, and outside of Kirby, I feel like it's rarely executed that well. And this felt like something I had been looking for many years. Like, yes, more New Gods. Not, I mean, Young Gods, but it is that kind of bombastic, cosmic archetypes in a sea of Kirby crackle and shouting at each other. I don't know. Yeah, it hit me in exactly what I want.
Yeah, and Paradox Man. I'm all about Paradox Man myself, but especially I've read way back when I read all 9 issues or whatever, and Paradox Man stood out for me the most. But Colin, what were you saying?
Yeah, the first chapter of Paradox Man, I was on board. I was so hooked. Just that, especially that double page splash there. But with Young
Yeah.
Gods, it was inked by Alex Bialy and Windsor-Smith. I think that Bialy inked the first probably 6 pages, 5 or 6 pages, and then Windsor-Smith inked the last couple. Because you can see there's this. It's almost like I don't want to say it out loud, but Klaus Janson inking Windsor-Smith for Young Gods for the first 5 or 6 pages there.
Okay.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, it's interesting. So this one says inking by Alex Bialy,
There's definitely a shift.
and then this one, does it have a credit? Oh yeah, okay, yeah, inking by Alex Bialy and Barry Windsor-Smith, and then yeah, okay, so yeah, you're right. I guess they all say that. So they're all of them are. You think they? I was always under the impression that it was just sort of like they were in studio passing it around, and it's all a big mishmash. But you think there are specific pages that are inked by Barry Windsor-Smith and specific pages by Bialy?
I've looked most closely to Young Gods, and page 1
Yeah, I'm
and
not
2
sure.
especially, I would say are inked by Alex Bialy.
Oh, okay.
Well, I'm saying
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Yeah, there's something. It's like the face shape or something. The face
page 3
structure.
as well. Yeah, it's a little bit more flat. I
Yeah.
would say the planes are a little bit more flat.
Yeah. Yeah, but by the time you get to like page 8, they've got more 3D feel. You've got more of a I don't know. It's just looser. It's but loose in a good way.
Yeah, I should say that throughout Barry Windsor-Smith's entire career, he has drawn comics, pages and pages of stuff, so many pages that we will probably never ever see. And he starts something and then rethinks it, and oftentimes, and like with Young Gods, he started it a specific way and then realized this needs to be more like Kirby. And
Oh, interesting.
he really embraced the Kirby storytelling for this particular comic. And I was saying earlier that when it comes to style, when we talk about style and an artist, we talk about how they draw a face or how they draw backgrounds, but there's also storytelling styles. And so, although I've created 4 phases and where I'm saying this is the 4th phase, he is, I call this phase Barry Windsor-Smith the writer, because he is of the mentality that the storytelling style and even the inking style changes based on what the story dictates. And so how he tells a story in Young Gods is different than how he tells a story in Paradox Man, is different than how he tells a story in Freebooters. And even then, pushing that even further, how he tells a story in Monsters, his magnum opus, is completely different. And even he feels that in Monsters, the style required more realism and complexity because the narrative is that. And yeah, so I just find it interesting that when he's gotten to this final form, that is the philosophy that he's running with.
Yeah, which is, I think, is pretty admirable to like crank out so many books and at the end come to the conclusion the style is what is needed for the story. Like it doesn't matter that the story comes from him, so that's the important part, not necessarily that he is drawing it, but that he is creating it.
Yeah, definitely. I think he thinks of himself as a storyteller first and foremost, which is aptly why the comic is probably called Storyteller. But I mean, yeah. Do you guys have much more to say about his style on Storyteller? I mean, I will say that, like, yeah, the detail is a lot more pared back because, again, he doesn't want to be loud. But it is still fairly detailed. Like that, he put a lot of work into that.
Yeah, he uses it correctly, I think, when it comes to detail. One of the things I'm noticing too is he's really pushing character design in Young Gods. There's a character who's just wearing like this crown of flame all the time. It's like, yeah, that's what I want to see. Like, make them feel like gods, make them feel otherworldly. And I think that's what I like about it, is that he is allowing them to be otherworldly, right? They've got kind of these ethereal faces and these perfect bodies, and he's really pushing the idea that they're not people. They're the next level above.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, and yeah, I'll just quickly grab Storyteller and show that, like, this is still in that phase that I put him in, but it looks different than all that art. That art is very watercolor focused, and this was intended to be black and white. So,
what is this for?
Have you not read Monsters?
No.
Taylor?
No.
Well, that is on your to-do list because it is a masterpiece.
Yeah, I remember when it came out, and comics social media just like intestines falling out from not being able to hold on to how they feel about it. Just like, oh my god, I can't believe he's back.
So
Well,
this was the first
it
page
was
for the story
nominated
when
for all
it
the
was the
major
whole
Eisners,
story.
and it won
It
all the
did-
major Eisners.
Yeah, I
Yeah,
saw that. Yeah.
I mean, look at this lettering. Just like it won best letterer, but this page right here, I believe, was the first page from that he drew in the 80s. He
Oh,
penciled this in the 80s, but inked it a little later, I believe, and it was a Hulk comic at that point.
oh, interesting. Okay, so is that what this
When
is?
it became something else, the beginning of the story, that he added so much more before it got to his initial first page. Yeah, he sent the Hulk pitch out there, and it was apparently sitting around the Marvel offices, and whoever was writing the Hulk comic saw it, which is basically that, like, he attributed a psychology to the Hulk, and then he came up with this story called Thanksgiving, where I guess young Bruce Banner in the 1950s is at a Thanksgiving dinner, and I guess Bruce Banner's father kills his mother, and that is the psychology of the Hulk, is the anger toward, like, he's just that little child still, and it's the trauma. It's about the trauma that he went through, and so like that Thanksgiving, that issue is basically within Monsters here, but somebody took that and made like Hulk number 312 or something, and just threw it in there,
Yeah,
and it
Peter
took.
David.
No, it wasn't Peter David. Peter David was very inspired by that story. In fact, he credits that original writer with inspiring basically the psychology of his entire run, and
Who's
and
the?
that's like the most seminal. That's the most seminal Hulk run. So Barry Windsor-Smith created an idea that somebody else stole, and then that writer got the credit for this expansive psychology behind the Hulk that permeated for years, and even was in the Ang Lee Hulk movie. Barry Windsor-Smith didn't read Marvel Comics at the time, so it took him 10 years to find out that Hulk story was stolen. You can read an interview he did in the 90s where he talked about that story, and somebody said, "Oh, that sounds a lot like Hulk number 312," and he's like, "What?" And then a couple of years later, he finds out, like, oh, the story was stolen, and so he had drawn parts of it and he reformatted it. It took him 40 years to do this comic, because he started it
Oh,
in the
wow.
80s and dropped it and abandoned, and then came back to
Oh.
it, and yeah, eventually finished it. And this is basically his final, like, big comic. This is his magnum opus, and it is a masterpiece. There is a Tomorrow's magazine that goes over this entire plagiarism thing. There's an amazing article where it goes through the entire situation and basically treats it like a trial, just brings out all the evidence. But yeah, highly recommended picking that up. But that was just a prelude to future Barry Windsor-Smith episodes. I wanted to cover the entire gamut and talk about his several different styles and approaches. And yeah, that was a fun episode. So
It's so interesting. This is the first time I think I'm actually seeing what he looks like. That's him, right?
yeah, that's him.
That is not what I was picturing. I was picturing like long hair and a skinny face. He looks
Oh, and
like
I think he does have long hair now. There was a couple of years when this came out a couple of years ago. He did an interview on YouTube where you can find an interview he did. I think it's like with The Beat and a comic store or a comic experience, and they did an amazing interview with him.
he looks
Which
like a
I recommend
magician that
checking
hits on women in the audience far too aggressively.
out.
You know I have the power over human minds, don't you know?
um, yeah. So, did you guys do any art this week?
I did, and I'm disappointed with it, but I got it done nonetheless.
Yeah, I did some art as well, which I will show off. But let's see yours, Taylor.
All right, so I want to make it very clear. I agonized over this one, and I think I'm only happy with the Daredevil pose, but even then, I don't know. This just kind of, it feels childish and quick, and I can do better, and I wish I did, but I ran out of time so hard. And but got to hit deadlines, so 8:00 Tuesday
Well,
night.
how long did you spend on it?
Oh boy, I spent about 5 hours on this, 3.5 of which was trying to get these fucking poses correct.
Pretty
And
damn good for 5 hours.
I
The
don't know.
Daredevil pose it works for me.
The Daredevil pose, I'm the happiest with, but it's just I don't know. I'm disappointed with the inking and everything. I can do better, but you know what? Sometimes you just don't got it that day. But the point is that I finished. How about you guys?
I've been doing a lot of these small cards lately, and yeah, as a sort of practice, but because I want to get better at color before I do larger pieces, but they still take so long. Like I swear they take about 5 hours or so, just because I'm just not confident with the color. But I've been doing a lot of like
Confident with the color. What the hell are you talking about?
well, it's why it takes me so long because I'm trying to figure it out. I'm not confident with it, but yeah, I've been doing a lot of warm colors. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna do a Barry Windsor-Smith Conan. I'm gonna do some cool colors for once.
Hell yeah.
So
That fucking rocks.
So this is
Oh,
a
damn.
specifically Barry Windsor-Smith's Conan. This is because that's different than like the modern version of Conan, I think, which is he doesn't have that horned helmet, and yeah, he's got all these like accoutrements.
To
He's
see
not
more
17 years old.
To see more of Eric's Viking warrior work, you should all definitely pick up. I'm stalling for time because I can't quite remember the name. What's it called?
Eternal.
Eternal. Yes.
Eternal.
Eternal. You want this book?
Yeah.
This shit rocks.
Cool. Yeah. Thank you, hype man Taylor. Okay, so yeah, let's shall we close it out?
Yeah, let's close it out. All right. Well, thanks for watching, everybody. Don't forget to comment, like, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Hell yeah.